G.I. Joe has a preoccupation with space, probably a holdover from the space age from whence G.I. Joe came. And why wouldn't the Ultimate Fighting Man want to venture into the final frontier? It happened within the first 10 issues of the Marvel comic. It happened within the first season of the Sunbow animated show. G.I. Joe in space is a hotbed of controversy to most fans. But what is not a hotbed of controversy is how much the Defiant Launch Complex rocks. And boy, does it ever. So much, in fact, this review is going to battle to keep the runtime down to around 10 minutes. The Defiant Launch Complex. Is this the best vehicle / playset ever produced? Yes? No? It's gotta be a very strong contender, at least. But this is not intended to be a comparative review. In this review, the Defiant is in competition with itself. Does the playability outweigh the fragility? Does G.I. Joe need a space shuttle badly enough to warrant the cost and difficulty associated with acquiring one of these behemoths? G.I. Joburg is going to do its best to answer this and other burning questions about the Defiant Launch Complex.
As a general comment about this toy, the level of detail is staggering. As far as I'm concerned, we've never seen it on a toy before, and certainly not on a toy since. Intricate surface texture. Nothing phoned in, nothing lazy or repetitive. Left does not necessarily match right unless symmetry is called for. Visual and textural splendor is a real hallmark of this sculpt, and I had no clue how spectacularly sculpted she is until I was able to run my hands all over her body. The rounded, milky smoothness of the booster, the extreme technical nature of the gantry, the faux ceramic heat shield texture of the shuttle. The team of sculptors and designers responsible for this piece deserve our awe and adulation. Other reviewers start with the crawler. G.I. Joburg never made originality its goal, so the crawler it is. In my imagination, I made the crawler out to be a pretty secondary element. It's just a launch pad on wheels, right? And it's certainly not built for high-speed chases. The spaceships were the true prize, right? I used to reason that since I would never be able to own a complete Defiant, I would prioritize acquiring the Defiant shuttle. Maybe even the Crusader from 1989, and then maybe, if I was really flush, track down a Defiant booster. Well, I have to confess that since getting the whole bang chute, the crawler is the piece that I have played with the most. The cab is a wonderful 3-seat affair for hardtop and 2 other personnel. The rear seat boasts an active periscope unit, which is curious since this thing has pretty good visibility through its large orange windows. It doesn't elevate, so it's not designed to see the shuttle off. I guess it's just for magnifying the road ahead and monitoring for any suspicious activities that could endanger a launch. But it's really cool to have the view screen rotate with the lens. If you want to keep up your suspension of disbelief, you can exit the cab via this narrow doorway leading onto the walkway, which runs from the cab entrance to the rear. And there are foot pegs. There is a large separate piece representing a radiator unit.
The rear of the vehicle has adequate protection provided by a pair of dual artillery units with a unique sliding rotating base. More than enough to swat pesky stuns and even blow attacking his tanks away before they can jeopardize the launch. Descend the steps and you'll find your way into one of 2 chambers. More on those later. As our patrolman continues around the base of the crawler, he passes over an underslung dual turret. The same automated gun is repeated on the other side, and a third on the top of the cab. The round trip ends at the third and final dual artillery cannon. Combine these various weapons with the 5 quad laser mounts, and you've got a vehicle that can literally throw up a wall of fire at anything brazen enough to attack Joe's most valuable asset. But all it would take is one stray rocket to send the whole thing to oblivion. So in this case, Joe's usually excessive amounts of firepower is totally warranted.
The crawler is purpose-built to carry the space vehicle from the underground hangar to the launch area on the desert floor. Once there, it's time to move the gantry into vertical position. And here's the rub. It relies on a plastic crank, a metal rod, and 2 springs. And I wouldn't advise using it. The attachment points for the springs snap under the stress. I believe the crank mechanism can also stress and twist and break. To be honest, I wouldn't know. I use plenty of hand support to raise the gantry, and that's fine by me. The thought of casually cranking this bad boy skywards with a pair of pokey springs, threatening to snap loose and demolish everything in their path, keep me awake at night. So I use quite a bit of elbow grease. But once it is erect, she is truly a glorious sight. She might be a G.I. Joe vehicle, but she's also a transformer with a multitude of modes. Swing out the blue gantry walls and marvel at the splendor of 6 gated technician positions. Death Star gunners would have safety railing envy big time. What is so groovy is that no position is a repeat mold of the other. They're all unique, and some boast excellent sticker detail. 3 diagnostic scopes on this side, and some labeling on the other. Check out the back of the snake armor! And a pair of sliding lifts to allow access. But how do you gain access to the lifts? Who knows? The designers thought of a lot, but they didn't think of everything. You now have full access to the Bay 4 and Bay 5 sections. 2 of the most discreet engine covers are to be found here, picked out in only a slightly darker color. Magnificent that someone took the time to give this richly sculpted area a play feature of its own. And once again, plenty of foot pegs. There are banks of sophisticated monitoring and diagnostic equipment that line the walls. Screens, buttons, cables, once again sculpting in overdrive and showing off. Would that mean that bays 2 and 3 are imagined to be under the gantry? And would that make the cab Bay 1? Or is the gantry itself Bay 1? Who cares? There are awesome stickers and even more awesome positions for launch controllers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off! I'm not a big dude, but I can bench press 120 kilograms, and I have to admit, simulating a launch with this monster is more awkward. And they expected children to be able to do this?
The next component is the one responsible for rocketing us into space. But it is far more than a mere booster. I like to refer to it as the space station. It has plenty of real estate and the play possibilities are endless, as it provides enough props and detail inside its rather large plastic shell to feed the imagination. My favorite portion here is the bridge. Choosing the right Joes to man the bridge is the first challenge, but after that I can imagine that this is a much bigger craft and really get into the guts of being on a bridge in a space shuttle, barking out orders, getting intel, engaging in tactical space battles, or even mundane things like repairing a failing spy satellite or whatever. The portholes are large and offer great visibility to the assembled crew, and a large screen conveys essential mission information. There are a multitude of foot pegs here and 4 seated positions. I like to think of them as commander, helm, navigation, and tactical. They're spacious, have great sculpted controls, and displays with stickers. Even fiddly foot pegs to secure the occupants at their seated positions. You know, for when you turn your Defiant upside down, because you're gonna totally do that. Commander doesn't get much in the way of headroom though, but in a space vehicle, you can always expect to be a little cramped. And here's something that far too few large-scale vehicles offer. There is an access doorway that you pop off the top of the booster, and when you swing it into its vertical position, it marries with the portal at the back wall of the bridge. Pretty cool, huh? Thanks, Hasbro.
What isn't cramped is the staging area that is now revealed. You can place crew on the floor, secured by the U.S. foot pegs, ready for a briefing from the mission commander. You can set up a repair bay with a bit of imagination, or a deep space lab. There are 2 computer stations with screens and swerving chairs with back pegs, and super cool gunner stations that flip out and slide upwards along a track. Why? Who cares? It's rad. The weapons they are responsible for swing out from concealed outer wall positions and consist of a laser turret and mini missile each. Both are on ball joints and have excellent ranges of motion. A little finicky getting the turrets out from behind the ship's hull, but what a kick-ass and tasteful inclusion. So many Joe and Cobra vehicles sacrifice their lines to slap weapon systems on. Here we have weapons that conceal seamlessly and aerodynamically. And then they blew it, with the guns up front. But you can leave them out of the equation quite easily. And you should. They're commonly cracked off because they really just get in the way.
I love a good playset, and I really love a vehicle or playset that has tons of nooks and crannies, and the space station has them in abundance. On the lowest level, we have the most sci-fi inclusion on the playset. It's called a transporter, which they clearly took from Star Trek. Slide back that clear plastic screen with the tasty readout sticker, and a figure will fit into the hollowed out section. There is a cool screen beside it to operate the device. It doesn't make the figure cleverly disappear or reappear, so if you aren't feeling the overly futuristic vibe, you can dial it back just to being a med bay with a sophisticated diagnostic scanner. If you climb the ladder, you reach the middle level. It's designed like a living quarters for the Joes to sleep in, but to my mind, it's a place to stow spacesuits, all alien style. All you gotta do is grab a few Star Brigade Joes, take out the heads, and pop the bodies on for full effect. Another thoughtful inclusion is a small locker alongside, but it can't swing very wide. Sadly, you'll need the hands of an 8-year-old, or should I say, you'll need hands the size of an 8-year-old to place gear inside it. Perhaps a secure weapons lockup? And I know it might be getting tiresome to keep bringing up the inclusion of the foot pegs, but here they are, on the ceiling. An utterly ingenious reminder of what life in 0G would be like. Ascend the stairs to the top level and marvel at the airlock. How cool is that? There are some neat overhead storage slots. Inner and outer doors are simulated by a single swinging plastic piece, and a silver sliding hatch allows your astronaut to go for a spacewalk. Once you have achieved orbit, it's time to separate the shuttle from the space station for the mission. A serious looking metal clip and bar secures the shuttle. Aside from that, the back edge fits into these two plastic brackets, and that's it. Separation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Defiant, in its truest distillation. Such a good vehicle. So good they released it again 2 years later. But this is the version you want. Brilliant white, so brilliant. The detail on this one takes a unique turn. While the crawler is detailed to a ridiculous degree, and the booster is all smooth plastic, the shuttle is covered in a textured, sutured skin, just like the ceramics used for real-world shuttlecraft, and clearly designed to withstand re-entry. This is a truly miraculous ship, reusable, powerful, and armed and ready for a wide variety of mission roles, like satellite repair. The bay doors open, with some difficulty. They're designed to be hellishly tight, but once they are open, she is fully equipped for extravehicular activity. A claw arm extends from the hold and features a range of movement and a multi-positional grabbing claw that ratchets into firm positions. Even a dual laser cannon for cutting, welding, or fending off space debris or attackers. A rigid wire can plug into the bay floor and extends into the included EVA pack. Genius. Even more genius would be if there was a logical storage compartment in the bay. There are a few sculpted areas that look like it could hold the pack, but none of them are purpose-built to hold it exactly. Pity. And the cockpit is another sculptor's showcase. It's tight, realistically tight for a space vehicle where every bit of internal space is utilized. These control arms are geared together to spring into position, locking the crew in place. It's sadly not very ergonomically designed. These guys are awkwardly up to their elbows in controls. But the helmsman has a good forward view through the central porthole, and plenty of elbow room. It's unfortunate there's no access between the cockpit and the rear section, but where would they put it? We're okay with using our imagination on this one. If the shuttle encounters any hostile action, it can deploy a pair of laser cannon from 2 cleverly concealed hatches. And what's more, they have some side-to-side rotation. Great!
The shuttle can perform docking maneuvers in outer space with the space station in order to move personnel between them. And this is ingenious. Something that always bugged me about other space vehicles that I owned up to this point, like the Millennium Falcon, is that they had no way of docking in space. The Defiant breaks that unfortunate convention, allowing you to play out the tense docking procedure sequences that we've seen in so many films. There is a round hatch on the shuttle that aligns with a square aperture on the space station. Both have hatches, but there is no way of locking them together, which, to be fair, is probably a good thing. If you were to accidentally knock the whole thing over, that connection would be the first thing to snap. So the shuttle just rests, not securely, but not too precariously, atop the space station structure. The tunnel formed is once again realistically cramped. This toy, I suppose, can accept modern-era figures, but not on my Defiant, thank you very much. And once your shuttle crew is on board and prepped, it's time for the shuttle to return to Earth. The aft landing gear deploys using 2 separate control levers that lock down securely. The nose wheel is brought down manually, and mine is a little loose. But they have a multitude of rubber tires, and I love me some rubber tires. In the finale of the G.I. Joe Special Missions comic, the Defiant shuttle lands atop the U.S.S. flag. It sadly seems to occur between the panels almost, and with far too little fanfare for my liking, just culminating in an impressive splash page to see the comic title waltz off into the sunset. Impressive or not, we wouldn't advise landing a spacecraft on an aircraft carrier.
A killer playset would be just that, but with a pair of sweet exclusive figures to operate it, it's elevated to the next level. And it kinda had to be. This is not the kind of equipment any old Joe can be in command of. With Hardtop, you have a slow-talking, meticulous stick-over Joe. The type of guy with the patience and zen to move the team's most expensive asset, a towering mountain of rocket fuel and sophisticated electronics. He's got to be a consummate professional and fills a real niche role. Along with that, he has the thing for powder blue uniforms. But it's clean and spacey, you'll not see Hardtop in the trenches, so that's fine by me. And while we do expect him to get down and dirty with maintenance, when it's mission time, all he should be doing is playing the world's slowest, most careful driver. An obscure figure, but an essential figure.
Payload, on the other hand, is an Air Force colonel with 3 tours of duty flying Phantom F4s during NAM under his belt. But he was born in Cape Canaveral, and it's spaceflight that was in his bones. The figure has a hell of an impressive spacesuit. If this figure wasn't so damn exclusive, I'd argue that he was the finest G.I. Joe figure ever produced. The level of detail, once again, is insane. The ribbing textures on the Defiant arm patch, the front brace, the pistol, presumably a laser. It is all on point and super sharp. The boots look as they should, with a bulky sole. The helmet has gloriously crystal clear orange set into a brilliantly white frame. And his EVA pack is spectacular. While I appreciate Hasbro's efforts to branch out with the design of the Astro Vipers pack and Countdowns pack, I wish they had just used the template of payloads. The control arms move up and down and even have some side-to-side wiggle room in order to be more easily grasped by payload. And we already covered its umbilical feature, which is kick-ass and totally unexpected. It's awesome! And as an added bonus, there is an attachment point underneath one of the booster's removable panels. The Defiant received one major feature in the Marvel comic, but plenty of smaller cameos in the comic and even in video games. In issue 65, the Defiant is scrambled to protect spy satellites from Cobra attack. We are introduced to both Payload and Hardtop in that issue, and they execute a shuttle launch with supreme efficiency. Hawk commands the mission personally, with Sci-Fi operating the laser cannons, naturally.
The Defiant is able to carry a battle bunker vehicle plus crew into space in issue number 110, Escalated Armageddon, and send it back down to Earth using a re-entry shroud and some parachutes. G.I. Joe is not for the faint-hearted. And in issue number 146, Immovable Objects, in a joint mission with the October Guard, the Defiant is able to land on an asteroid hurtling towards Earth with a full complement of Star Brigade troopers, the Starfighter, and Armorbot. Impressively exaggerated hold. But landing on an asteroid? Too cool. And it predated Michael Bay's Armageddon film by a few years. Coincidence? Maybe, but it wouldn't be the first time Larry Hama has been cribbed by Hollywood. In the 1991 G.I. Joe video game by Taxan, the level select code screen features the Defiant with a Crusader shuttle attached to the booster. Enter a level code correctly and you're treated to an animation of the booster and shuttle blasting off.
In the follow-up game, G.I. Joe 2 The Atlantis Factor by Capcom, you receive orders from Stalker, who is on board what is referred to as the G.I. Joe Orbital Base. Presumably, they mean the Defiant.
And in terms of the cartoon, the Defiant was completely absent and sorely missed, with the toy released after the Sunburst series concluded and discontinued before the Deke series picked up. it was left in the no man's land of obscurity. A pity really, as a handful of somber tunes took place in space, most notably the third miniseries, The Further Adventures of G.I. Joe, where Cobra take control of G.I. Joe's space station and use it to establish their Pyramid of Darkness. And in The Wrong Stuff, where the Joes use specially designed Sky Strikers to attack a Cobra space station. How cool would it have been if they had used the Defiant instead?
When I think of the Defiant, I think exploration or treasure or both. When we got to open this, a few hours were spent figuring it all out. I think we all purposely ignored websites and manuals and wanted to approach it like kids with a new toy, trying to fit all the parts together, then working out what is what. We literally got a box full of stuff to then go on to assemble a box full of stuff. I guess exploration is a good word to describe playing with the Defiant for the first time. You are constantly exploring the toy and finding new ways to play with it. I mean, of course you are. This thing was not cheap, and you better get something substantial out of it, right? Right? But the saddest thing about the Defiant is the fact that, well, Hasbro was releasing Sky Patrol and Tiger Force and Python Patrol and Night Force. They didn't spare a thought to make a set of gallant young astronaut Joes, Space Force, to man something like the Defiant, until the Defiant itself was a vintage. I mean, look at Payload. Just look at him. How awesome is this guy? Imagine a Joe force of astronauts that are as cool, if not cooler, than this. And that's a major whoopsie for Hasbro. Hey, don't look at me like that, Jetpack Hawk. You don't get to ride on this rocket with that many grenades hanging off of you. Jeez, dude. I've always said that G.I. Joe is the one franchise that most affirmed the idea that all properties go to space to die. But the Defiant did just that. It defied that notion. In its simplest form, it's a space shuttle launch complex designed to launch a space shuttle into space. You could choose to play out all the spacey tropes like hyperdrive, shields, aliens, or you could go ultra realistic with it. Accurate separation, maneuvering and docking procedures, because the toy accommodated all of that. It was a superbly designed toy that actually created a complete intergalactic play pattern, all within one massive box. Additional figures not included. The Defiant will forever be an island of awesome, with no complementary or opposing vehicles remotely approaching its standard of excellence. It's all the space Joe needed. Or was it? Would you have preferred the Defiant to usher in the space age of Joe? Or were you happy for Joe's golden age of space exploration being born and then dying in 1987? Hit us up in the comments below. But as far as its pedigree is concerned, well, we hope you agree with us when we say this toy is the greatest. No better space vehicle playset has ever been produced. At this or any other scale, it is a true wonder of toy history. And we love it.
Oh, Lord. Such jokers.